The xenoarchaeologists' scanners hummed softly as they swept over the crumbling ruins, their readings defying logic. The structure was old, older than any known civilization in the galactic archives. The alloy beneath their fingers was strange, unnaturally resilient despite the millennia of decay. No records matched it. No empire claimed it. A flicker on the datapad caught their attention, a fragmented inscription, barely legible. The translation matrix struggled, spitting out broken phrases. Asterisk Terra, final stand. Remember us. Asterisk Terra. An ancient name, one that sent a chill through them. They had heard whispers of it before, in forbidden texts and dismissed heresies. A dead world. Dead race. The deeper they dug, the more the pieces refused to fit. The technology was advanced. Too advanced. Energy signatures suggested power sources beyond current understanding. And then the logs. Scattered, corrupted, but enough to paint a terrifying picture. This was not some primitive outpost. This was a bastion. A last holdout. The scholars' hands trembled as they cross-referenced the data. The ruins weren't just old. They predated the first galactic accord by millennia. That was impossible. Unless the accord had lied. Unless history had been rewritten. They tried to report the findings. The response was immediate. A terse message from High Command. Asterisk, discontinue excavation. Return all artifacts for analysis. Asterisk, no explanation. No curiosity. Just cold bureaucratic dismissal. That night, in the dim glow of their private terminal, they dug deeper. Classified archives. Deleted entries. And then the truth. Humanity. Homo sapiens. Not the frail, extinct primitives taught in schools, but something else entirely. A species that had once stood astride the stars, guardians of 1,000 worlds. And then they were gone. Not by natural extinction. Not by accident. Erased. The scholar closed the files, pulse racing. They were supposed to stop. Obey. Instead they packed their gear. Whoever had buried humanity's legacy had a reason. And they were going to find it. The scholars' stolen data core burned a hole in their pack as they fled deeper into the fringe systems. Every jump risked detection, but stopping meant capture, or worse. The artifacts they'd smuggled out whispered secrets in dead languages. And the more they deciphered, the more the galaxy's foundations cracked. Humanity hadn't just existed. They'd ruled. Not through conquest but through something far more dangerous. Necessity. The logs spoke of a cataclysm, a wave of annihilation from the galactic rim, something so voracious it consumed entire civilizations. And humanity, they'd stood against it. Not as conquerors but as shields. Their fleets had bought time. Their scientists had forged weapons to push back the tide. And then the betrayal. The records were fragmented, but the pattern was clear. Once the threat was contained, the other species turned. Fear curdled into violence. Humanity's technology was too advanced. Their influence too vast. A coalition of empires struck in unison, bombarding their worlds, purging their name from history. The scholar's stomach twisted. This wasn't extinction. It was extermination. A coded entry flickered to life. A transmission buried under layers of encryption. A human voice ragged with static. Asterisk, if you're hearing this, we lost. But listen, we left caches. Ships in the void sleeping. Wake them. The storm's coming back. Asterisk. The scholar's breath caught. Survivors. Impossible. And yet, a shadow moved in the docking bay. They spun, heart hammering, but it was just a drifter, hooded and silent. The stranger's hands were steady as they keyed a sequence into the scholar's terminal. A star map unfolded, highlighting a derelict sector. They're not all gone, the drifter murmured. Asterisk, but the ones who remember are watching you now. Move fast. Asterisk. The terminal went dark. The stranger vanished. The scholar stared at the coordinates. Someone had gone to great lengths to bury the truth. And now they were coming for whoever dug it up. The coordinates led to a graveyard. Not a planet, not a station. Just a vast, drifting ruin of ships, their hulls pocked by micrometeorites and time. The scholar's scanners recoiled at the readings. No power signatures. No life. Just silence and frozen metal. Then the first signal hit. A ping, faint as a dying heartbeat, pulsing from the largest wreck. The scholar's hands shook as they maneuvered closer, docking clamps screeching against ancient alloys. Inside, the air was tomb-cold, the corridors lined with frost that hadn't thawed in millennia. And the bodies, not skeletons, not dust, corpses preserved in the void's embrace, faces locked in expressions of quiet resolve. Humans. Their armor was unfamiliar, their insignia long erased from galactic memory, but their forms were unmistakable. The scholar stepped over a fallen figure, their hand still curled around a weapon fused to the deck by time. The central chamber was a mausoleum of dead terminals, until one flickered to life at their touch. A face materialized in the static. A human, gaunt and exhausted, speaking to a recorder. Asterisk final log. The others are gone. The accord hit the cryovaults first. Bastards knew what they were doing. Asterisk a cough wet and raw. Asterisk but they missed the secondary fleet. The sleeper ships. Buried them in the dark between stars. If you're hearing this, find them. Wake them. The devourers aren't finished. They're just waiting. Asterisk. The screen died. The scholar reeled. Devourers. The cataclysm. The reason humanity had been erased. Not because they were a threat, but because they were the only ones who knew how to fight what was coming. A noise echoed through the derelict. Not the groan of metal. The step. The scholar spun, but the figure in the doorway wasn't the drifter. It was taller. Paler. Its eyes reflected the dim light like polished obsidian. You shouldn't be here, it said, voice like grinding stone. The scholar's hand crept toward their sidearm. The figure didn't move. Asterisk, but since you are, you'll help us. Or you'll die with the rest. Asterisk. The terminal behind them flared back to life. Star maps spiraling outward, converging on a single point deep in uncharted space. Where something was waking up. The thing in the derelict wasn't human. It moved like liquid shadow, its voice scraping against the scholar's skull without sound. You dug too deep, it hissed. Asterisk, now the cycle begins again. Asterisk. The star map burned behind them, a single pulsing locus in the dark. The scholar's breath fogged in the freezing air as the realization hit. This wasn't just about lost history. Humanity hadn't been hiding. They'd been standing guard. The figure lunged. The scholar fired. The blast tore through its chest, and kept going, ripping open the hull behind it. Oxygen screamed into the void as the scholar grabbed the terminal's data core and ran. The escape pod's engines flared just as the derelict shattered behind them. Alarms blared on their ship. The core's decrypted files spilled across the screens. Coordinates, schematics, warnings in a dozen dead languages. And one repeating directive. Activate beacon. The scholar hesitated. This wasn't just waking the dead. It was declaring war on the galaxy's lies. Their fingers hovered over the console, then slammed down. The transmission burst outward, a single pulse on a frequency no modern ship should recognize. For 3 heartbeats, nothing happened. Then the void answered. First one, then a dozen, then 100 signatures flared to life on the scanners. Not ships. Hatches yawned open on derelicts older than empires. Lights flickered in corpses' eyes. And from the darkest reaches, something vast and jagged uncoiled, its silhouette blotting out stars. The scholar's calm crackled. A voice, rough with static and something older than rage. Asterisk. We've waited a long time for someone to remember. Asterisk. On 1,000 worlds, alarms sounded. Councils convened. The Accord's lies unraveled in real time as the screens filled with waking giants. The scholar exhaled. Let them panic. Humanity was done sleeping. The first human warship tore through the galactic arm like a blade through flesh. It shouldn't have been possible. Its hull was scarred from ancient battles, its design unlike anything in modern fleets. all jagged angles and weapon ports that glowed with sickly green light. The Accord's border defenses fired. The shots dissipated against its shields like rain on stone. Then it spoke. Not through comms. Not through any known frequency. The words simply appeared in every mind across the system. A psychic broadcast that bypassed language, bypassed resistance. Asterisk, you erased us. You made your children forget our sacrifice. Now see what we held back for you. Asterisk. The screens lit up with new contacts. Thousands of them. Emerging from slipstreams that shouldn't exist. Not just human ships. Something else rode with them. Something the Accord's historians had dismissed as myth. The Devourers. Tendrils of blackened metal and screaming light unfurled at the galaxy's edge. The same nightmare humanity had fought and died to contain millennia ago. The Accord's grand fleets scrambled. Their weapons useless against the storm they'd been told was extinct. The Scholar watched from their stolen ship, fingers white on the controls. This wasn't just humanity's return. It was a reckoning. The first human boarding parties hit the Accord's flagship not with bullets, but with memories. Soldiers in ancient armor forced the High Chancellor's neural feed open and showed them the truth. The burning of Terra, the slaughter of children in cryovaults, the lies woven into history. Across 100 worlds, the same scenes played out as humanity's surviving AI's hijacked planetary broadcasts. Archives corrected themselves in real time. Monuments to the Accord's unity cracked as the names of the erased reappeared in their stone. The Scholar's calm crackled. The voice from the derelict, the not-human thing, whispered. Asterisk, they made you forget your gods. Now watch them remember. Asterisk. The Devourers reached the first Accord world. Humanity's fleet moved to intercept, not to save. To stand where they always had, between death and those who didn't deserve it. The Scholar finally understood. This wasn't vengeance. It was the universe being forced to see what it had thrown away. The Devourers hit the Accord's outer colonies like a cosmic tide. Entire worlds went dark in minutes, their comms dissolving into screams before vanishing entirely. The galaxy watched in paralyzed horror as the nightmare humanity had once contained came roaring back, hungrier, angrier, and with 10,000 years of vengeance coiled in its wake. Human ships didn't help. They formed a wall of ancient steel between the Devourers and the core systems, but didn't fire. Not yet. Their weapons remained silent as colony after colony fell, broadcasting every death to the Accord's ruling worlds in brutal, unflinching detail. The Scholar's hands shook as they pieced together the truth. This was a lesson. Demonstration. You called us monsters for holding this line. A human commander's voice echoed across every frequency. Asterisk. Now you'll learn what monsters really look like. Asterisk. Panic tore through the Accord's leadership. Fleets that had once hunted human survivors now begged for their intervention. The same politicians who'd erased humanity from history now screamed for their protection. And still the human fleet held position. Until the Devourers reached New Genesis. The Accord's crown jewel. 5 billion souls. The first world to outlaw human memorials. As the Devourer's shadow fell across its skies, something changed. Human ships moved. Not to defend. To record. The Scholar watched in mute horror as New Genesis burned. Its planetary shields failing, its cities crumbling to ash, while humanity's warships simply watched, their cameras capturing every moment. This is the cost of forgetting, the human broadcast stated. Cold. Precise. Asterisk, this is what we stopped. This is what you unleashed. Asterisk. Only when the last Accord defense platform fell did the human fleet engage. Their weapons tore through the Devourers with terrifying efficiency, their ancient tech proving why they'd been feared and needed all along. The Scholar finally understood humanity's endgame. They weren't here to save the Accord. They were here to make sure the galaxy never forgot again. As the last Devourer ship shattered against humanity's guns, a single transmission went out to every surviving world. Asterisk, we are the rememberers. The warning. The shield. Asterisk. Was. Asterisk, try to erase us again. Asterisk. The scholar looked at the stars and knew nothing would ever be the same. The silence after the Devourer's defeat was more terrible than the war itself. Human ships lingered at the edge of reclaimed systems, their presence a constant, unspoken question. The Accord's surviving leaders huddled in bunkers, their once proud fleets reduced to scrap floating between stars. And the scholar, caught between past and present, watched as the galaxy held its breath. Then the broadcasts began. Not from human commanders. Not from surviving politicians. From ordinary citizens, their voices shaking with something between awe and terror as they shared stories passed down in secret for generations. Tales of human doctors working through plagues. Of engineers sharing technology without price. Of soldiers standing guard over alien nurseries as war raged around them. The scholar pored over newly uncovered archives, each file another crack in the Accord's lies. They found records of human colonies surrendering themselves to orbital bombardment rather than return fire on civilian targets. Of research stations transmitting their final discoveries even as their life support failed. A pattern emerged, not of conquerors, but of protectors who'd been too good at their job, too necessary, until their very excellence became the reason for their destruction. The first human delegation arrived unarmed on the ruins of New Genesis. They didn't bring demands. They brought lists, names of every human and allied species exterminated in the Purge, coordinates of mass graves, records of the first Devourer War that the Accord had rewritten as minor border skirmishes. The surviving council members expected execution. Instead, they were given shovels. "Dig," the humans said. And the galaxy watched as its leaders unearthed the truth with their own hands. The scholar finally approached one of the human soldiers, an ancient figure in scarred armor, their eyes older than the stars. "Why show mercy now?" they asked. The human's smile held no warmth. "Because now you'll remember what mercy costs." As reconstruction began across 1,000 worlds, new monuments rose, not to victory but to failure, to the price of forgetting. And floating at the edge of every system, silent and watchful, the human fleet remained. Not as conquerors, not as saviors, as a reminder. The first new human child was born on Mars exactly 387 years after the Purge. The galaxy didn't learn about it through announcements or broadcasts. They discovered it the way humanity intended, by stumbling across the birth record in newly opened archives, buried between casualty reports from the First Devourer War. A simple entry in unadorned text. Asterisk Sol System, Martian Reconstruction Zone. Live birth record #001 star. Mo. Weight, 3.2 kg. Status, healthy. The impact was seismic. For 3 centuries, humanity had existed only as ghosts, vengeful specters haunting the edge of civilized space. Their fleets were omnipresent but silent, their home system quarantined behind impenetrable defenses. Most assumed Terra was a graveyard. The birth record proved otherwise. The scholar, now aged but sharp-eyed, tracked the ripple effects across the galaxy. On Centauri Prime, black market dealers reported a sudden surge in demand for pre-purged children's toys. On the ruins of New Genesis, workers restoring the planetary archives began leaving small gifts at human memorials, something that hadn't happened since the reckoning began. Then came the second revelation. Deep in the Accord's old intelligence files, the scholar found a corrupted data packet marked Terra Rebirth Initiative. Fragmentary reports spoke of underground cities, of gene banks protected by last-ditch failsafes. Most chilling of all, a single line estimating minimum viable human population, 12,000. The numbers didn't add up to survival. They added up to a miracle. When the scholar finally breached Sol's quarantine perimeter, a feat that should have been impossible without immediate vaporization, they expected warships. Instead they found gardens. Terra's surface was still scarred, yes. Continents remained glassed. Oceans still bore the chemical burns of orbital bombardment. But between the ruins, new growth spread in careful, deliberate patterns. Forests planted in geometric formations that matched ancient human military symbols. Lakes shaped like tears. And children. Dozens of them playing in the shadow of a shattered orbital defense platform, their laughter carrying across the thin new atmosphere. A human woman approached, her face bearing the distinctive marks of radiation treatment. She said nothing as the scholar collapsed to their knees. The truth was too large for words. Humanity hadn't just survived. They'd been waiting. Not for vengeance. For witnesses. The scholar's final transmission to the galaxy consisted of just 3 words. Asterisk, they're coming home. Asterisk. Somewhere beyond the edge of known space, the human fleet finally turned its bows sunward.